Good evening. Just give it a moment or two while people join us. I hope you had a good week. Before we get started tonight, I just there's a little thing that cropped up during last week's online gatherings, the sessions that we do using Google Meet, where they're much more interactive. And then during the study, we go live and we live stream to the website. If you are interested in joining one of those sessions, one of the things that we've never pointed out is the minute we go live, we stop letting people in. It's just a practical thing. And we have had some issues in the past where people have waited until we were live to try and join and cause disruption to the live stream. And so if we've already started the study, by all means, you can absolutely still listen in through the website. There's not a problem, but the Google Meet session won't be accepting new folks coming in. It's just a practical way so that people that are listening aren't subjected to some of the trolling and the things which otherwise might happen. So if you try to join us our last Wednesday, we're still not back up to live streaming every session just yet, as I'm still in recovery. But if you try to join us last Wednesday, once the talk had started and we were into the study, I'm very sorry that you weren't able to. And it's not a reflection of whether we'd like you to be a part of what's going on. It's simply a practical way in which we can make sure that people don't have to put up with some of the inevitable trolling that goes on in the kind of the online world. Let's get on with tonight. It's been a while since I've done a Sunday night and started with In the News this week, but there was something so extraordinary this weekend that came up in the news that I just couldn't ignore it. A man called Mark from Oxfordshire. I'm sure if you Google it or you have a look on, I think I saw it on the BBC News certainly, but on several different news channels, you'll be able to get his full details. But a keen amateur photographer was out with his camera and trying to get pictures of the red kites that fly near where he lives. And he captured an extraordinary shot of this magnificent avian hunter, resplendent with the light catching the extraordinary color of its plumage when it had been successful, and it was clutching in its claws what looks an awful lot like a sausage roll. Lots of people have said, oh, surely it wouldn't be, but I did a little bit of digging. I said a little bit, a very small bit, a bit of Wikipedia and a little bit of the RSPB, and they are scavengers. They don't just hunt for prey. They also will take carrion or anything they find that to them seems tasty, and clearly this red kite had decided it was going to have a go at a sausage roll. And so it was flying with one half in each of its talons, and then pecking away at part of the sausage roll. It's an amazing photograph. But I'm not sure it's necessarily the best diet for a red kite. And the same way that we've now learned that feeding the ducks bread is not a great diet for a duck, and you have to be careful what you put out for hedgehogs. Lots of people used to put out bread and milk for hedgehogs, and it used to cause terrible problems because of lactose intolerance. For every creature, there is something which is the ideal food for it. There is a diet for which it is designed. And so as I was looking at that picture, I began to think about, well, what about what we consume? There is so much in the media at the moment that demands our attention. Our nation is rushing headlong towards war, and we need to be aware of what's taking place, and we need to consider whether or not God is calling us to speak into those situations, to speak truth to power, to speak comfort to those who are suffering because of what is going on in the world. And there are situations much closer to home where there are needs that we should be addressing. And so we can't withdraw from understanding what's going on around us, but at the same time, there are things that we probably shouldn't feel too much on, or perhaps at all. And it's not just that, but we live in a society where everybody has something that they want to sell you, something they want to tell you, some process, some practice, some pattern of living, some dietary advice, some exercise advice, some social advice, whatever sphere of life you think about, There's someone out there who can sell you a guidebook, a scheme, 28 days of an email in your inbox every day telling you what to do today to look like them or think like them or act like them or make the sort of money they're making. It's everywhere. And there are people that spend a small fortune trying to achieve what they believe they are either entitled to or that they should be achieving. God, speaking through the prophet Isaiah, speaks to a people who are chasing all the things that the world says will work. Isaiah 55, starting at verse 1. Oh, everyone who thirsts, come to the waters, and you who have no money, come buy and eat. Yes, come buy wine and milk without money and without price. Why do you spend for what is not bread? Why do you give your wages for things that do not satisfy? Listen carefully to me and eat what is good. Let your soul delight itself in abundance. Incline your ear and come to me. Hear, and your soul shall live. I will make an everlasting covenant with you, the sure mercies promised to David. You know, when I think about what Jesus offers, it starts like this. It's free. It's free. That is not to say that it is valueless. It is not to say that it didn't come at a cost, but he has covered the cost. And so what Jesus offers doesn't require you to settle a bill. It doesn't require you to dip into your own resources or your own reserves and say, well, can I afford it? Can I give what is necessary? Can I commit the time? Can I commit the energy? It comes without money and without price. If it was just without money, we'd say, okay, well, it's free, but it might cost you in other ways. But this is without price. That is to say, this is not about you exchanging one thing for something else. This is not God saying, here is something for you if you'll just give me something else. And so the comparison is a stark one. Why would you give out of your resources? Why would you give your wages? And remember, wages are not just about the cash. It's about the life that you sacrifice to earn it. When you spend money that you worked to earn, what you're doing is you are exchanging time, which you won't get any more of, for whatever it is you spend that money on. The Bible is full of people who've tried everything. And when they get to God, they're at the end of themselves. Whether it is the woman who touches the hem of his garment, or it's Naaman in the Old Testament who's been to every healer and every crackpot, who's tried all the different things, that his nation would give him to try and cure his leprosy before he comes to God and discovers that he can't buy it. He can't give anything for it. But when God heals, he does it out of the generosity of his own mercy and loving kindness. What Jesus supplies is free. Don't listen to anybody who says that you have to pay for it. Don't listen to anyone who puts up a paywall. Don't listen to anyone who expects you to buy a ticket to hear the message of the good news of the gospel. Don't listen to anyone who says that if you come as part of a special package, then you might get a word from God. It's blasphemy. Come, buy wine and milk without money and without price. Why would you spend your money for what is not bread and your wages for what does not satisfy? Instead, God says through Isaiah is that his word is food for our souls. I'm kind of dating myself here, but when I was first doing youth work, there was a song that had been brought out by the guys up in Manchester, the Tribe, and it was, I'm going to eat the word. I'm going to eat the word. Of all the things that I could fill my life with, of all the things that I might think taste good or seem to be pleasant, but they don't have any substance, the one thing I know is going to sustain me is the word of God, and specifically the word that he delivers into my life himself. I need his spirit to be the one that takes it and gives it to me. You know, there's never a time in our house where there's not food in all the cupboards. We're very, very blessed in that we have an abundance, and we're starting to get into the seasons now where we're beginning to get food out of our garden. We had some broccoli. Just last week, it was sort of the first real greenery from outside. We've had some stuff from the the different window boxes and things. But this was really exciting. The first thing, we'd go out and cut it, and what an exciting thing. But the reality is, it needs someone to cook it. And so although, our lad's getting a bit older now, when he was very little, he couldn't go and get himself something. So even though the food was there, to benefit from it, somebody who had the ability to prepare it and to deliver it in a format where it was good and it was healthy had to do that for him. The Bible is God's supply. It is life to us, but it is only life when it is the Spirit of God that applies it. The Spirit of God who helps us receive it. If all you hear from is me, well, I've got nothing for you. I can't break it down into ways that you can receive it. I don't know how you need to hear it, but the Spirit of God makes the word that without him is dead, living, effective, powerful, transforming, life-giving. His word is food for our souls, and his plan for us is that when we listen to him and eat what is good, that is, we receive his word. This is what God says: let your soul delight itself in abundance. There's an abundance in God's supply. I think one of the most awful things that I hear again and again is people casting doubt on whether or not God speaks to his people. See, our God has always been identified as the God who says and the God who speaks. And the attack on his authority has always come, has God said? And whether it comes as a denial of something he said or simply a denial that he speaks. Jesus' baby brother James tells us that if anyone lacks wisdom, they should ask God, who gives generously to whoever asks. But don't ask from a position where you're not going to trust what he says, but rather ask because God doesn't want to give to someone who is uncertain and unclear whether they're going to trust him or not. That kind of relationship is a relationship of dependency, a relationship of hope and expectation that says, I believe that you are good and I trust that you can speak, that you want to speak, that you can make yourself understood, and that you can enable me to walk in it, that you'll give me what I need, strength and wisdom and peace and resources, whatever it is that I need to walk in the word that you speak to me. His plan is for us to delight in his abundant word, his preceding word, his word by the Spirit, his word understood as he makes it real to us. And so God says, incline your ear. There are more modern ways of translating that, but I just love the idea of lean in, incline, and just lean in and listen. Come to me, hear, and your soul shall live. Only his word is a source of life, not my word, not theological textbooks, not Bible commentaries, not the latest journaling, none of that. His word is life by his Spirit. And everything else, the best that we can do is point you to his word. Just say, go and get into the word of God by the Spirit. Allow him to make it real and living and powerful and active, and then start the conversation. Your prayer life isn't meant to be you just listing stuff to the heavens. It's meant to be you listening and God responding. Spirit to spirit. His mind with your mind. His heart with your heart. The word of God is the only sure source of life. But there's something else I want to talk about tonight, because Jesus takes that idea of the living word, of the preceding word, of the word that comes from God, the word that is sent and the word that is for you. And as he applies it to himself, he also takes that same principle and he begins to combine it with another extraordinary truth. In John 6, starting at verse 26, we read this. Jesus speaking to the crowd that have now followed him across the Sea of Galilee, and they've gone hunting for him because they're wondering, well, what's he going to do next? These are the ones, many of whom had experienced the feeding of the 5,000. And so now they've tracked him down. Jesus said to them, truly I say to you, you seek me not because you saw the signs, that is, those other miracles, the things that confirmed his divinity, his authority, his power, his mercy, but because you ate of the loaves and were satisfied. Don't put all your effort into food which perishes, but labor instead for the food which endures to everlasting life, which the Son of Man will give you, because God the Father has set his seal on him. Then they said to him, well, what shall we do that we may work the works of God? They're thinking about that idea of laboring, okay, so we put all this effort in to find you, and you're saying, well, don't put all your effort, don't put all of your commitment into getting natural things that fade away, but instead get from me food that endures, something that lasts for everlasting life. So they're like, okay, what shall we do that we may work the works of God? Jesus answered and said to them, this is the work of God, that you trust in him, depend upon him, believe in some translations. But the word there is about this commitment, this complete dependency, that you trust in him whom he sent. So they said to him, what sign will you perform then, that we may see it and trust you? What work will you do? Our fathers ate the manna in the desert, as it's written. He gave them bread from heaven to eat. And Jesus said to them, truly, I say to you, Moses did not give you bread from heaven, but my Father gives you the true bread from heaven. For the bread of God is he who comes down from heaven and gives life to the world. Then they said to him, Lord, give us this bread always. And Jesus said to them, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me shall never hunger, and whoever believes in me shall never thirst. Verse 28, they ask him, what shall we do that we may work the works of God? You know, I have a lot of conversations with really beautiful, sincere, just determined people. And they've read about what God offers, and they've read about what a life of working with Jesus, being a fellow laborer, sounds like. And they read the stories of people that served his kingdom purpose in the New Testament and the Old Testament, and they think about what it must be like to be there when he changes lives and he works in power, and they're like, God, I want to do the work. I want something to, what should I do to do the works of God? And that's a great heart, and it's a beautiful thing. And then at some point, there's been a whisper in their ear, just a noise from religion. Oh, you're not trying hard enough. You haven't knocked enough doors. You haven't done enough reading of the Bible in a year. You don't spend long enough on your knees. You haven't begged God for long enough. And so they start to ask, well, what am I supposed to be doing? How can I serve God's purpose? Well, what more do I need to do? Do I need to sing louder? Do I need to shout more? Do I need to pray more quietly? Do I need to read in a different translation? Do I need to go to Bible college? What do I need to do? What am I called to? What's my life for? And religion has taken people with a heart to just want to be involved in what God is doing, people who just want to be the friends of God, who know what the Father's doing, who are sharing in his building of the church. And it's try to box them in to works, box them into, well, we used to call it the Protestant work ethic. Nowadays, we call it the grind, or whatever it is, and to take earthly principles. How many times have you seen one of those daft memes? It's all about, well, you're just going to have to work harder, and you're not dead yet, so keep grinding. And it's crept into our thinking about what God requires. But Jesus is absolutely crystal clear. They asked him, what shall we do that we may work the works of God? And Jesus answered and said to them, this is the work of God. That is the work that you are called to. This is the work that you need to do to receive everlasting life and the supply that only the Son can give. That you trust in the one that he sent. The only work that qualifies us to receive the abundant supply of Jesus, his life, of Jesus, his person, is to trust him and to trust that he is enough. You see, when you trust him, you receive his life, and his life is full of purpose. His life is extraordinary and beautiful and glorifies the Father. His life is the life that sustains all things. And he gives us this life by the word that he speaks in us and through us and to us and over us. A transforming word, a word that delivers us, a word that dynamically changes us into his likeness, a word that equips us, a word that makes us fruitful and more abundantly fruitful. Think about what God speaks through Isaiah. Let your soul delight itself in abundance. The abundance that God has planned for you is Jesus and Jesus only. All that you need, all that you are, all that satisfies, all that is good, all that is life-giving and nourishing and strengthening and transforming, all that will make you wise and holy and gentle and merciful, all that will give you peace and a spirit of love and power and a sound mind. It's all in the giving of Jesus, the bread of life. And the only work that qualifies you to receive him is to trust him. You see, there's no other way, and there's no other supply. The folks in that crowd went back to Jesus and they said, hey, so what are you going to show us? What sign are you going to give us? And we know that we can trust you. And they're still angling for a free lunch. They want him to meet their practical needs. They want him to do something that looks a bit like what they're expecting. And what they're expecting is manna in the wilderness. What they're expecting is water from the rock. What they're expecting is the physical things. So Jesus hears them saying, what are you going to do? And their example is, well, didn't Moses give them bread from heaven in the wilderness? And Jesus says that wasn't the bread from heaven. I mean, it came from God because God provided it, but it wasn't the bread from heaven. It was stuff that you ate today and it rotted tomorrow. It was stuff that you ate today and you were hungry again later. The only way to get the true bread from heaven, the life-giving bread, is to receive it from the Father. And then Jesus says, I am the bread of life. There is no other supply. You know, there are times when God will ask you to do something and he will give you what you need. Bless God every time that he does it. There are times when you'll cry out because you have a shortfall in your own strength, your own wisdom, your own resources, and God will fulfill and multiply, and he will provide abundantly. And bless God when he does that. But you know what? You can't live on it. Even the good things that God supplies to meet a temporary need or to deal with an earthly shortfall or to equip you for a particular circumstance, you can't live on them. The only life-giving bread is Jesus, the bread of life. No other supply measures up. The manna in the wilderness didn't measure up. It was here today and gone or stinking tomorrow. But Jesus is a supply that never dries up, never is exhausted, never fades, never loses its quality, never diminishes. He is a supply of abundance. He's the living word and he is the life-giving bread. And so tonight, just as we finish, I want to talk to you, particularly if you've been caught in the grind. Some of those principles from whatever it is you do as a job or from the culture in which we find ourselves living. It's a particularly British thing as well to get your nose to the grindstone. I mean, not a day goes by when you don't hear someone in the media complaining that somebody somewhere, some generational group or whatever, just not working hard enough. You've got to work harder. All the work is finished. Jesus, the great high priest, Jesus, the one who accomplished salvation and redemption and freedom. Jesus, the one who opened up all of the Father's resources and pours them by his Spirit into our lives. Jesus, the one who takes those who are dead and makes them alive, takes those who carry all the burdens of their past, makes them free and new, and transforms them into his own likeness. Jesus, the one who loves without reservation and gives himself completely to anyone who calls on him and trusts him. Jesus does not require your labor. If you trust him, he's going to be the living word and the bread of life that you need. Tonight, I want to encourage you to lean into God because our God speaks. He's the God who answers, sometimes by fire, but he always answers. And maybe you're somebody and you've been living in a cave. I don't mean practically, I mean maybe, but you're somebody who you heard all the religious stories that glorify the idea of the still small voice. But the truth is that God didn't want Elijah to stay in the cave. He asked him to come out onto the mountain. I want you to think about what Moses saw, a mountain that burned with fire and that shook with thunder and lightning. And then when he went into the presence of God, when the people in the valley thought he must surely be dead because of what they saw flashing on the top of that mountain and the noises they heard, but he met with God face to face as a man meets with his friend. And Elijah's in the cave and he's desperate. And he feels like he's the only one left. And he feels like he's got no strength and no resources. He's done everything that God has asked of him. He's just seen what seemed to be a great victory. But there he is, and he's hiding in the cave. And God says, come out on the mountainside. And the mountain shakes and it burns. And there's the sound of a mighty rushing wind. And he won't go out there because he's still cowering in the cave. You know, God is merciful to Elijah, and then in the end he speaks in the only voice that Elijah will cope with hearing. And so there is a kindness in that still small voice, but he was meant to see the glory of God. He was meant to know the majesty and power. And tonight, if you're someone and you've been in the cave and you've been thinking that maybe all you're only ever going to hear is nudges and whispers, I want to tell you there is a God who speaks, and for your sake, he shakes heaven and earth. In fact, he will shake anything apart from the one thing that he has determined that will remain: God and his people. And you are one of those people if you trust in him. God's intention is not for you to hear nudges and whispers. He's not for you to hear the secondhand mumblings of preachers who try to monetize your sorrow, your suffering, your desperation. He wants to speak to you himself. And he is compassionate and he is merciful, and he will do it in a way that you are able to bear, but also a way that you are able to understand. You won't need me or anybody else to interpret it for you, because the Spirit of God who is in you knows the mind of the Father. Lean in and listen for Jesus. Take the time to do it. Not the time to labor, not the time to try and do works, not the time to try and fulfill all the checkboxes that make you a good little evangelical religious person, because it will crush you every time. But if you listen for God and you wait on him, listen carefully to me, he says, eat what is good, let your soul delight itself in abundance. That abundance is only found in Jesus, and it is for you. And so this week, when you're facing all the pressures that you might have picked up because you've been around religious folk, we all have. And when you're facing all the internal voices that say, you could do more, you know, I want to encourage you to take the time out with God. See, the work isn't going to stop because you stop. And his kingdom isn't suddenly going to shrink because you haven't figured out how you're going to do something. How are you going to contribute? His promise is that for you, the work of God is to trust him. And everything else is from him and for him and through him and to him. It'll be his strength, his wisdom, his power, his life, his word, his spirit at work in you, with you, and through you. And his purpose is that you should enjoy the abundant life that Jesus alone can give your soul. My prayer is that you know the peace of that promise and that perfect purpose. The Lord bless you. As our thoughts of this evening, I pray you have a good week. God willing, we'll see you next Sunday night.